Hi, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to do, as you can see there, I'm going to do my thoughts on the Goodreads Choice Award winners for Best Middle Grade and Children's Books. A few thoughts about this. So I've been doing a little bit of digging, and I've discovered that last year this was two categories. So that meant there were middle grade and there were children's. And I think in the case of, I think it did a disservice to this book right here, Eyes That Kiss in the Corners. Okay, so let me back up a little bit. So the first thing, so how I'm going to do this, I'm going to talk about different topics and how that affected either the ranking of the book, my thoughts about it, and just my overall thoughts. I'm going to pick topics, talk about it, and then move on to the next topic. So the first topic, as I mentioned, is the fact that they combined two categories in one for middle grades and children's. One of the things that I've discovered, because as a middle school teacher, I do tend to read a lot of middle grades books because those are the books that my students are going to pick up if they pick up books. But a lot of children's literature, like chapter books and things like that, get put into that category. So I have read some of them, but then I just feel like, okay, so me as a person, when I read that stuff, I was so much younger, and I'm not educated in how to teach the younger grades. I found my sweet spot with 7th grade, and a lot of these chapter books and younger books are for, say, 4th, 5th, or even 3rd grade. And that's not my forte. And so I have difficulty with reviewing those. And in this case, there were just 2 books that were not middle grades specific or supposed to be middle grades. And that was Eyes That Kiss in the Corners. And honestly, for a picture book, it did really, really well. I'll talk about my thoughts on it in a little bit. The other book, one that I did not read, is right here, and it scored last, and it's the Where's My Joey? And I knew when I was looking at the list that it was a picture book, and I'm like, I'm not gonna read that. I'm not skilled in it. I wasn't sure about Eyes That Kiss in the Corners, so I did read that, and I'm very glad that I did. But in that case, it did it a huge disservice because I know there's got to be a lot of really good picture books. So the next thing that I want to talk about is I want to talk about the availability of the books. So one of the things that Goodreads does is they will put books on this list that came out weeks or even days before publication, because you can have access to these books, early reviews, ARCs, etc. What I have discovered is that makes it very difficult for people like me, or people, say, less financially endowed. I'm not rich, but to get a hold of these books because they're not available from the library. And the 3 books that fell into that category for me were Daughter of the Deep. If you've watched my vlog for this week, you'll have seen my thoughts about Daughter of the Deep. Let's see. The second one was A Wolf for a Spell. I saw the cover and I'm like, oh, this is going to be amazing. I'm absolutely excited about that. And the last one is The Shape of Thunder by Jasmine Warga. And oh my word, I was so excited about that one because I have read Other Words for Home by this author and absolutely loved it. A Wolf for a Spell is still not available at my library. The Shape of Thunder and Daughter of the Deep are now on order, so I did place holds on them. I don't know how long it's going to take to get them, but I have holds on them. So I'll be really excited to see what those books are like. But my thoughts about that, I explained briefly in that little segment that I did on Daughter of the Deep, is if the book is not available at the library, it's not going to be available at a school library for sure if it's not available at the public library. And that means that the people who have read it either received free copies or they have the money to purchase it. To me, that does not seem equitable. I don't think it is equitable to do it that way, which I think makes it very difficult. Okay, so that's topic number 2. Topic number 3 was the time scale of see, I don't think they have it anywhere on here. They did not release these awards with winners, the long list, until November 16th. I was watching for weeks because I knew they were going to do it. And I really wanted to do this because I've never voted in the Goodreads Choice Award. And I kept waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And so then, let's announce it on the 16th. Let's take out a round of voting. There were 3 rounds. There used to be 15 nominees plus write-ins, then a second round, a semifinal round, and a final round. And it went from the beginning of November until about when they released the finalists, the winners this year, which would have made it so that I probably could have gotten a lot closer, at least, in finishing all of the books. But as it was, I had 8 days. I had 8 days to read all of these books. And since I don't tend to read a lot of new releases, I had to read all of them. I didn't have to. That was my choice. And because I wanted to make a fair choice, I wanted to make an actual vote. I wanted to know about the nominees before I voted. And the limited amount of time made it so it condensed it so that it's a popularity contest. And if you read a lot of new releases, which again goes back to that equity issue that I talked about a minute ago, most people who get books from their library, they're not going to read a ton of new releases, especially new releases from later in the year, because their library is not going to have them. And so it's an equity issue, and it's the other thing that I just forgot. So Rick Riordan. I was talking to my student teacher about this last week, and I don't have anything against Rick Riordan personally. I love Percy Jackson's series. I've loved I like the Kane Chronicles. I absolutely love what he's doing with his imprint, the Rick Riordan's Presents imprint. Prior to this year, I didn't even know that imprint existed. But then I read Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. That, spoiler alert, my number 1 book of the year. And then on this list, we have several more Rick Riordan Presents imprints here. I read the 4 books of the Arusha trilogy, really loved them. I read City of the Play God, that's another one, and The Last Fallen Star. So I read 3 more of the Rick Riordan Presents imprints. And I love that instead of him using his privilege as a white male, he is seeking own voices for these different mythologies. And I think that's fantastic. I've got a lot of his other series under his imprint on my list. I love that. I don't have a problem against him personally. But right here, this trivia, the bonus trivia right here. This is Riordan's 11th consecutive victory in this category. They haven't had the Goodreads Choice Awards for that long. I think they started in 2009, which means there's been 1 year where Rick Riordan has not won this category. I like the guy. He's doing a lot of great stuff, but will you quit it? Because, there are lots of other amazing young adult, middle grades authors, and they're not getting the time of day because his books keep getting put up there. When I heard somebody else say that, I was so ticked off. And that's my problem. It's like, he's a white male and he's gotten this honor for this many years. There's something wrong with the system. And I'm bummed because I'm probably really going to like Daughter of the Deep when I get it from the library. I plan to read it. I like Rick Riordan stuff, and I like what he's doing with his imprint. The system, though, is broken in the fact that he has won. This is not him going out and voting for his book. He's built this popularity, and that popularity contest gets him all the stuff. Editing Jenny here. After I recorded the initial video about the Goodreads Choice Awards, I happened to watch another booktube video and saw in the comments where someone had stated that Rick Riordan himself had asked Goodreads to not include his name in the future And so I actually found this is his own website. And as you can see up here, this was published on December 9th. So the day after the awards were announced. And so he gives the Italian cover of Daughter of the Deep. And right here, he says also on the subject, Daughter of the Deep, I just won the Goodreads Choice Award for Middle Grade Fiction. As always, I'm so grateful and honored for the support of readers and for the work Goodreads does connecting readers to new books. However, I've asked the fine folks at Goodreads to please retire my name from consideration for this award in the future, as it's not fair for me to take the attention from so many other wonderfully talented and deserving middle grade authors. So just wanted to jump in and say, I knew that I really liked Rick Riordan, and I definitely was not upset at him for his book winning in this particular situation, but this is definitely a good sign, and I love how he has stepped up to both celebrate the win but also acknowledge how it's not really fair that his book has won 11 times in a row. Now, I'm going to go to the bottom of this list, and I'm going to talk about the books and whether or not I agree with the ranking. And that'll be my last bit on this video. So first off, I already told you I did not read Where's My Joey. Didn't read it. I wouldn't know where to start with ranking. So I did read The Last Fallen Star. You'll be able to see all of my rankings on here. I made sure to update all of the ones that I had read. I am currently reading Ground Zero and have one more. But so The Last Fallen Star was actually the first on the list that I read, and I thought it was pretty good. So I know that, okay, so you look at The Last Fallen Star and you look at City of the Plague God. When I talked about these two books, I ranked City of the Plague God a lot higher than The Last Fallen Star. If Goodreads allowed for portions of stars on ratings, this would be a 3.5. I thought it was a good outing. There were a few things that I didn't like, but this felt very stereotypical Rick Riordan style, Percy Jackson style. Obviously, it's not written by Rick Riordan, it's written by Gracie Kim. The fact that this very typical style without the popularity of Uncle Rick himself, it does not surprise me that it is this low. The Shape of Thunder. The thing that doesn't surprise me that it is so low is because it was published so recently, and Jasmine Morga does not have the name recognition that Rick Riordan does. I believe Other Words for Home was her debut novel, or pretty close. So The Shape of Thunder, if you're not able to get it and you don't have the name recognition, you're not going to score very well in a popularity contest. I understand where it is ranked. I disagree with where it is ranked, knowing Jasmine Warga herself, but I haven't read the book yet. So obviously in later videos, you'll see my thoughts on it because obviously we'll talk about it. City of the Plague God. I am super bummed that this one is so low because I thought it was excellent. Probably a 4.25 rating for me. It makes me wonder if the fact that Sikh is Muslim had anything to do with how low it rated. I believe that both The Last Fallen Star and City of the Plague God are first in their series. So maybe that was another thing because Arusha ranked higher and that was the fourth in that series. So maybe there was some buildup behind the series. I don't know. But I'm really bummed that it was that low. Unplugged. I don't have a lot to say about this one. That is the next book that I'm going to read after Ground Zero. I have read other Gordon Corman books. They're cute. They're funny. They're a little bit sarcastic. They're very they're contemporary. There's not the fantastical elements to it, so it doesn't surprise me that it is lower on the list and that it didn't make the final round. Again, like I mentioned, I can't say anything about A Wolf for a Spell because I haven't read that one, haven't been able to. Now you can see right here, my choice didn't make it out of the first round. Root Magic. I loved this book so much. And I'm like, oh my word, I've read this amazing book. I knew that it was going to have a hard time making it out because it doesn't have name recognition and it's about a topic that's not super popular. And I thought that Eden Royce did an amazing job. I loved learning about root magic. I loved learning about how Royce wove that together with the setting of 1963. And I'm born and raised in South Carolina, and I am just now learning more about the Gullah Geechee culture of the Sea Islands of my own state. And so my student teacher, his heritage is of the Gullah Geechee in the Sea Islands. And so when I started reading that, I'm like, oh my word, I got to tell him all about it. So I loved this. I loved this so much. And I was so bummed that it didn't make it out of the first round. And then we come to Ophi's Ghost. Now, I knew when I picked up Ophi's Ghost that it hadn't made the next round because by the time I picked up Ophi's Ghost, it was the final round. But when I picked it up and was reading it, I'm like, oh, this is the one I'm going to vote for in this round. Then I went and checked the list. This one also did not make it out of the first round. There are bits of root magic evident in Ophi's Ghost as well. It's hard for me to say. I don't have the standing to talk about whether it was accurate or not, or why people didn't vote for these, because I'm a white woman. But I have my suspicions, which I find incredibly unfortunate. And that when you look at the vote numbers, I would guess that a lot of these books had numbers more similar to that before the final round opened, because these are cumulative. So these books never got more votes added to it in the final round. And so let's see, there's 8. Okay, so the next 2 also were the top 2 out of the final round, which, thinking about that, the top 2 of the ones that didn't make it, thinking about that and looking at Best Nerds Forever. I talk about that in the reading vlog that went up on Monday. No, it just was bad. It was bad. I mean, there were some things that were like, oh, that's cute, which is why I got 2 stars instead of 1, but no. And then for Red, White, and Whole, again, there's not name recognition. It was really name recognition that got a lot of these. So then we get into the final round books. I was quite pleased that Never After, even though it made it, was the worst or the lowest ranked of the books that made the final round. I didn't like it. There was so much to it, but it fell flat to me. Arusha, for it to be that low, it bothers me because this Arusha, the 4th one, was really good. Really good. And the only reason that it made the final, I think, is because it was the 4th book and it had built up a following. But you'll see with the numbers, 6,000, almost 6,900, so much lower than the winners. Well, these numbers are lower overall to everything, but it's like most of the people voting on this are adults. I'm an adult. Ground Zero, I can't really speak to that because I'm only about 60 pages in. Alone, again, you can see from my rating, middle of the road for me. Beast and Beauty, I really do not consider this a middle grades book. There's no way that I would put this on my middle grades, my 7th grade classroom shelf. A handful of the stories in this anthology, okay. Some of them, no, I'm not putting that on my shelf. If I taught high school, would I put it on the shelf? Yeah, because I think it's appropriate for high school age. 7th graders, no. Starfish, after reading that, wow, I wanted it to rank higher. I so much wanted it to rank higher. I'm so glad that it's in the top 5. So it is 5th ranking wise. And I absolutely loved the centering of therapy and the positive portrayal of it and how that really helped Ellie. Must have. I'm going to purchase it to put in my classroom. So now we get to the top books. So a lot of people were really disappointed that Amari and the Night Brothers was 4th and not higher. Almost everyone I've seen predicted the Daughter of the Deep would win, including myself. I think what a lot of people didn't expect was for Eyes That Kiss in the Corners to do so well, just because it's a picture book in a category dominated by middle grades books, like even more so, more advanced than chapter books. There are no chapter books on here on this list. So it's like, how is this middle grades and children? because there's chapter books and you don't have any on here. I think that was the thing that a lot of people who wanted Amari and the Night Brothers to do better weren't expecting. And I will say, on reflection, probably if I reread Amari and the Night Brothers, which I may, I would probably rate it closer to a 4-star. I think I went into it with sky high expectations. And just because it didn't reach my sky high expectations, it changed my interpretation of it. I think it's an amazing book and well needed. And I love the fact that it was in here and that it did so well. I think it would have been third had this been in a just middle grades category, and Eyes the Kiss in the Corner had been in its own category for picture books and children, because you see the difference in these votes is 170. So there's 170 votes difference between these two. So they're basically tied for third. And then we get to the top two. And again, the reason that these are the top two is name recognition. Victoria Schwab is well known, especially amongst young adult and fantasy readers. And so she gets that name recognition bump from these adults that are reading these books, reading these middle grades, or just looking so that they can vote. I think that the number of readers like myself who read it with an eye towards, so partially enjoyment, I want to enjoy the books that I read, but also focused on the actual target demographic. I am a middle school teacher. I don't teach English anymore. I teach social studies. I've taught both, but I have a classroom library and I'm constantly encouraging my kids to read. And so that is the lens through which I am reading these books. And so in that case, I think there's a smaller number of people who actually vote on this, who actually are reading with the target demographic in mind so strongly. So I think that goes into it. And there are my thoughts on the Goodreads Choice Awards for Best Middle Grade and Children's. Really, this should be Best Middle Grade with 2 picture books thrown in. So thank you so much for joining me on this. Maybe next year will be better. Maybe next year Uncle Rick won't have a book in the running and somebody else can win, but with our luck, it'll be somebody like Victoria Schwab, who also has name recognition. Not that she's a bad author, but you know what I mean. So thanks so much for joining me. I would love to interact with you in the comments, hear your thoughts about this. What did you think? And I hope to see you in the next one.